It's playoff derby week in the New York metro area. The New York Red Bulls preparing for the biggest Hudson River Derby of all time, but still, in a way, are reveling from the crazy round one upset, which was the biggest upset in MLS Cup Playoffs history until 6 days later. Atlanta did that to Miami, but we're not going to talk about that. But I'm very happy to be back on the Red Bulls Experience podcast, joined with James Birle for the second time. So, James, thank you for coming back, and a big month for the Red Bulls.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Luca. I think the last time I was on here, we were previewing Decision Day, and there was a little bit of dread in the way we were speaking about having to face the Columbus Crew and then potentially having to face them another two times at least, or maybe three more times into the playoffs. And we were trying, or at least I was trying to advocate against that. Let's play Cincinnati. I don't want to play Columbus. And um, I'm happy to say that I'm sitting here with egg on my face because not only do the Red Bulls actually play pretty well in that decision day. They lose 3-2, but admirably so. And then they go into the playoffs and they win a couple games right off the bat against the Crew. So I think if that shows anything, it's something you said right before we got on the air. And it's that, it's really tough to beat a team three times. The Crew couldn't beat the Red Bulls three times. And now we know what lies ahead. And they're playing a team that's already beat them twice, as much as we didn't enjoy that happening during the regular season, especially the second time around in our own building. This now represents something bigger than what this entire season has meant to this point. This is going to be a game that's looked at, talked about for years to come. And yeah, it's the most exciting Hudson River Derby yet. And I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm still in a way just so happy about round one, but I think the
Yeah.
luster has kind of worn off now that this is obviously looming on the horizon. I mean, it was already 2.5 weeks ago, which is crazy. Um, it was just a joyous release of everything in a way going right, and that's not to say that this year is our year. This year is fully different, but just if you're taking that series in the context of the past 5 seasons, where we were round one exits, and obviously a lot of those were single elimination years, so it was just like one game, we're done. Just to have us get over that hump and win a series that isn't a wild card game for the first time since 2018 was just something that was admirable, and it made me feel like this team had collectively turned a corner. Obviously, we've had Forsberg back as our captain. Sandro in his first year as manager, there was that quote from I think the summer where he was like, "The expectation isn't for me to win trophies right away," but I think this is something that is like an indicator of this team can get stuck in. This team can play incredibly well and kind of punch above their weight when they are a full strength, close to full strength squad. And yeah, I think just the game plan, game one from Sandro. I mean, just going out to Columbus and squeaking by was something that just set the tone for the series, and it it really felt like, yeah, as we were saying, like we had two experiences with Columbus, obviously in their building earlier in the season, 3-0, awful result. The first one of the season that was like, okay, like we are not necessarily among the big dogs in the league. We got these guys who are, can put three on us, and it might have been the first game besides the Nashville home opener that we hadn't even scored a goal. And so I think the fact that you go into the playoffs, you start on the road, which historically means like you're supposed to have home field advantage in the two-leg aggregate format. But it's rare that the Red Bulls go to like a game one, leg one on the road and come back with a win, and that was just like a weird feeling for me. I was like, this is uncharted
Yeah.
territory. We're on top halfway through the series, so
Yeah. I even, you can't think back to even when the team was some of the best years in history where they were regularly
yeah.
starting two-leg ties on the road and then having to come and rescue it at Red Bull Arena with varying degrees of success, as we will know. 2015 didn't go so great. 2014 Eastern Conference Finals against New England kind of set us up for our own failure, and then that didn't go our way in our own building. Charlie Davies. I mean, we could go through the list of all the memories. 2018 in both the conference semifinals and conference finals with
Yeah.
Columbus and Atlanta. Against Columbus, we were able to rescue it. Against Atlanta, we did ourselves too dirty in that first leg. So to be able to have that difference now, it does feel strange. I fully get that. I think the changes though that were made tactically by Sandro Schwartz ahead of that Columbus game were brilliant. I know. I tried to ask him after that second game if it was a bit of personal pride that he got the tactics right and was able to find success against Columbus against a manager who openly said after the decision day game, well, we kind of let the Red Bulls come into the game at the end there because we wanted to test things out. We know we were likely going to play them. We let them play their game for 10 minutes. And for 10 minutes, the Red Bulls made that game 2-2, and it looked like they could compete with one of the better teams. And they continued to do that. With that new shape, though, I think what it did is it made the life of Cucho Hernandez really, really hard. Always going to be shackled up against one of those three Red Bull center backs who, by the way, played phenomenally across both legs. Sean Nealis, fantastic in the air. Reyes, normally we're talking about Reyes, who's
Yeah. Oh my God.
he had a great game, but there are these one or two moments where he was either poor discipline, meaning clear yellow card, or poor positional discipline. He really didn't have either of those gaps. He didn't really have those moments. And if he did, guess who was back there to bail him out? It was Carlos Coronel, who, while having one of his worst seasons with the New York Red Bulls, had two of his best games back to back in the playoffs. And normally, we're not saying the Red Bulls are a team that puts it together for the playoffs.
Hmm.
Normally, we're saying the Red Bulls put it together for as long as they could in the season and crumbled in the playoffs. But here we are now saying that they're getting hot at the right time. And they've gotten goals from each of their DPs. We talked about this at Red Bull
Yeah.
Arena last time. Carballo scores in leg one, and then you've got Forsberg and Van Zer on the board in game two. And we haven't even seen their top scorer, Lewis Morgan, find the back of the net yet. He wasn't even there to take a penalty in game two. He was brought off. And that's not to say that he hasn't been remarkable in these playoffs as well. He's pitched in every chance he can get. He was instrumental in that Dante Van Zer goal for one. So a lot had to go right to get that result against Columbus, both on the road and at home. And a lot did. And they resisted every punch that Columbus had. They went down first at home. They come back with two goals and deservedly go ahead. And if not for the super sub that he is, Christian Ramirez scoring in the 97th minute, we don't even go to penalties. That game is won outright in regular time, and that's not something that I was expecting. And even on the road, they were able to score early and just bunker down, and they resisted so much pressure. Uh, I have to tip my cap to what otherwise was a fantastic game plan and even better execution from the players. I guess we've seen flashes, especially earlier in the season, of a team that has the ability to defend like that and hurt teams when it matters. At the beginning of the season, I was incredibly excited about what this team was capable of. Just the style and brand of football that they were playing is just as good as any team I'd seen the Red Bulls put out there since 2018. So the fact that they have been able to recapture that, but through a different manner, with this new 3-4-1-2 shape that has kind of allowed Forsberg to really be the key to unlock the defense, sitting underneath those strikers. Morgan, he presents that long option that stretches the defenses out. And of course, they now always have that cover in midfield. It's caused Carballo and Edelman to be very aggressive in the press high up, but they have that cover with Harper and Tolkien tucking back. It's really just a good system that I'm kind of now wondering why we weren't spending the whole season
Yeah.
in this formation. Um, but I don't think he changes it now going into New York City. Um, I just a lot had to go right, but it all did, and a lot of it comes down to tactical decision making and just the effort out on the field. They've just left everything out there in those two games, and now with the 2.5 weeks off because they got through, they didn't need game three, and now the international break. It's only made the nerves built up. I know you're feeling that.
100%.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
It's It's this is do or die in the most literal sense on Saturday. Without it, actually, you being fed to the lions after a loss. But this is quite literally a lot of people are dreading, but both nervously, cautiously optimistic. Very excited for this game because it's it's either New York is red or New York is blue, and that it's gonna feel permanent for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I think me personally, I am not even really cautiously optimistic. I think I am going into this really forgetting about our upset against Columbus. Like in a way,
Mhm.
in a way, it gives me confidence, but at the same time, it's just like all of that's out the window. I know the history of this club. I'm just so steeped in it, where it's like not even one series can kind of muster up my
Mhm.
unbridled. We are going to definitively win this game. I mean, yeah, going back to something you were saying before, just I'm so impressed with Carlos Cornell and Andres Reyes. I mean, in game two, Reyes had a bit more of his typical mistakes and fouls, right on the edge
Yeah.
of the 18. But game one from him was like the best game I've ever seen him play. Carlos both games. I mean, he was named the club's man of the match for both games. Just incredible as someone who's not necessarily been a fan of him, not just this season, but going back to 2021. I mean, just fully proved me wrong at the best time. I mean,
Hmm.
his saves in game one were just fully Luis Robles, like fully
Yep.
outstretched, body on the
Purely
line. Like
reactionary.
when that late one, the angle from the broadcast, you couldn't even tell he
Mm.
saved it. It just looked like it went
Yeah.
wide, and then you see the other angle, and it's like, no, that was actually one of the most incredible saves he has ever made in a Red Bulls uniform. And Reyes, I mean, just like just those performances made me like really fall in love with those players. Like it's crazy to say that for me, but they're just so integral to yeah the defense and the shape. And Carlos even talked about very candidly that he wasn't in his greatest form
Hmm.
down the stretch of the season. Obviously, his confidence maybe took a hit with being out of the rotation for Paraguay and didn't even play a minute in Copa America. Like I definitely felt for him in that way. Just his confidence kind of taking a hit, and we saw down the stretch some of his performances being pretty lackluster, and what a time to just turn it around and just I think he has to be buzzing now. Just three consecutive penalty kick saves, just unreal. This game on Saturday has a real likelihood of going to penalties. I mean,
Oh
NYCFC just
God.
won in penalties. Matt Freeze on the other side of the pitch, another incredible goalkeeper, obviously. So, um, look, you always want to get it done in regulation, but whatever that shootout would turn into, if it does go to that, and also a reminder that now we will have two 15-minute halves of extra time now that we're in
Hmm.
the conference semifinals. So, if it gets to PKs, it'll be a long game played up until that point, and you just hope that the Red Bulls can get it done in regulation and we can get out of that place as early as possible. In terms of the formation, I think I've seen some stuff about it's a narrower field. Like would the three back with the winger or the wing backs be as like successful in that condensed space? I don't really have like the crazy footballing IQ to really have an opinion on that, but I think at this point tactically, I have a bit of faith in Sandro to just figure it out, and whether it's making subs at the right time, whether it's adapting the formation slightly or keeping it the same. I think whatever happens really not that it doesn't really necessarily matter what the formation is, but I just think in a derby game anyway, like the players just live for it. We have extra motivation. Obviously, Columbus had our number both times this season, and so did NYCFC. And so, I in a way, I kind of like being the underdog in this game. I mean, you've just been having a lot of talk from NYCFC fans the past week and a half, and not guaranteeing. Obviously, that's going to come back to haunt them. Nothing is guaranteed, obviously, and I'm not going to this optimistic, but I think in a way being the underdog has favored NYCFC through this season and through a lot of their history. And I think for the Red Bulls this season especially, they love going in with a chip on their shoulder, and I think they do have so much to prove, and it would just be euphoric if they pull it off, and but would not be surprised if it doesn't work out. So.
Well, yeah, I think that speaking about the narrowness of the pitch, whether it's Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, it's always an obstacle. It's always a hurdle, but both teams play on the same field.
Exactly.
And it's just one you got to figure out. If I recall correctly, our last away win against NYCFC was September of 2021.
Yep.
That was under Gerhard, and that was pretty much in his 3-4-2-1 era of the team. So, I mean, we've had success playing with a back three in New York City at a baseball stadium before. It can be done. I think that team probably did play a little bit narrower in terms of the structure, but I think there's precedent there that a game can be won in that system. But I like what you said about keeping that underdog mentality, because the fact of the matter is, yes, the Red Bulls were above NYCFC for most of this season, but they didn't finish that way in the table, and they didn't show up when they played them twice this year. Really, they had Cameron Harper's screamer at the end of the first half at Citi Field earlier this year, and that was kind of it in terms of moments against NYCFC. The fact of the matter is they've got to go and switch that narrative, flip the script. And if they don't win, no one's going to remember this Columbus tie. No one's going to remember this season for, well, we had that great upset over Columbus. Well, you know what? Atlanta had a better upset over Inter Miami. And you just lost to your, I would say now, biggest rival in their stadium in their first ever playoff meeting of its kind.
I mean, just to interrupt you, I feel like DC has not felt like our biggest rival since 2014. I mean, that team is not. I mean, we had some fun games with Wayne Rooney in 2018, like the 3-3 with
the 3-3 draw with
hat trick. That was, I think, the last game where I was like, oh, this felt like a rivalry. But it's really been NYCFC for basically the past 10 years. So
and that's just me being a nostalgia head, a history head, trying to say that you have to clarify that NYCFC is the biggest rival. But I digress. This match is so big that the result is going to be the defining moment of our season, whether we like it or not. And for me, that should be the message in the team, within the team right now. Yes, look at what we did 2 weeks ago. It was fantastic. No one expected us to do it, but we can undo all of that in the next 90 minutes on Saturday. Not that, legacy needs to be a defining bit of motivation for this team. I just think that that's a good way to think of it, because it's the big prize or it's nothing now. We're one of 8 teams that remains. That's a huge opportunity, especially with the East wide open. NYCFC, they're going to be a difficult test for this team. They've proven that during the regular season. But Atlanta and Orlando are also beatable teams. So not that they should be looking too far ahead. They're 2 wins away from MLS Cup. That should absolutely be the goal for everybody. It shouldn't just be that we got out of the first round, upset Columbus, because, like I said, that's going to be meaningless if they get eliminated at Citi Field on Saturday. And there's another player that I don't think we highlighted who has been excellent. We mentioned Edelman and Carballo in the midfield, playing in that new higher role defensively. I think that's something that's going to help against NYCFC, because especially in the Red Bull Arena tie, but even in that first game at Citi Field, they had a very easy time checking to the ball as the striker, playing out wide and breaking. If the first pass into the striker is made more difficult by the midfielders, that's going to make the Red Bulls' job a lot easier. Their press is going to be more effective. And that's also going to mean that guys like Dylan Nealis can step into the midfield when we have possession and kind of do some of the work that we've never really seen. Dylan Nealis, we know he's been just a workhorse defensively, and he was absolutely magnificent across both legs against Columbus. But he's also been fantastic with the ball coming out of the center of defense. He has been phenomenal. He's actually played Noah Ayla. Him and Reyes have played Noah Ayla to the bench, who has been one of the best young defenders in all of Major League Soccer. So I wanted to give a shout out to Dylan Nealis and also the pressing structures of this new Red Bulls tactical setup compared to what we saw for most of the season. I think it's going to match up against NYCFC better. It's also potentially more vulnerable because the times that NYCFC do break the press, and that's Cushing style, want to play a traditional European, while quickly done, a build up from the back
Mm-hmm.
through the width of the field, and wants to be able to beat you down the center in the end. Um, should they beat the press early on, should they get the ball past midfield, should Edelman and Carvalho be knocked out of the game, then it presents a really, really, really difficult transition style defense for the Red Bulls to have to deal with. So there's a give and take there, and I'm really interested to see how players for NYCFC like Kevin O'Toole, or if it's Tavon Gray, who we saw play with Jamaica against the U.S. last night, to be able to help out and knock those players out of the game, because the width was really, really a an Achilles heel for the Red Bulls against this NYCFC team. Tavon Gray had a couple of assists and a goal even
Yeah.
against Red Bulls this year from that position. They've not been able to deal with the extra numbers arriving against this team. So if they can win the ball up higher in the pitch more frequently this game than they've done in the last two times against NYCFC, I think that dramatically increases their chances for success. But they're going to have to be successful when they do press aggressively, or maybe Sandro's going to change the approach altogether. I hope he doesn't, because I do think this is an area where we could win that game. But time will tell. Nothing is guaranteed yet. We're not even sure if they're going to trot out the same 11 that they did
Yeah.
against Columbus. It's been 2.5 weeks, and we're kind of still praying and hoping that Emil Forsberg maybe either doesn't get on for Sweden tonight, or if he does, that he takes it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lewis Morgan is in his own predicament right now too, that I'm sure that we have to talk about as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. The Lewis news was super disheartening. I mean, at first you just see he was pulled out of the Scotland camp. Why was he pulled out of the Scotland camp? Then it was clarified through. I don't even think the club released an official statement, but I think to some media members they just said this is a club related injury that he either like suffered during game two, or I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if he had like a general strain injury. He was working so hard in game one and two. Like you saw him at the end of game one, just basically like he would do some crazy run like that. I think it was it Max Arfson? I don't even remember. But like down the right flank, just like fully outrunning him, and winning the ball. It was like deep into stoppage time, and then he's just
Yeah.
crumpling and like, and then that same intensity in game two, wins the ball, keeps it in play, right at midfield, that led to the Van Zer goal. I mean, I'm not surprised that he has some type of nagging thing. I'm just grateful that he didn't fly out to wherever Scotland was practicing and picking it up and training or whatever. Like I'm grateful that he stayed here, is being treated. Hopefully it's like just something minor enough where it's just a nagging thing from the two games. He didn't come off as a substitute for any major injury like he did in the 2022 playoffs.
Don't remind me.
So like there was no distinct moment of contact or a tackle or a foul or something during the game where he came off, which makes me like to think it's something that's just more of an underlying nagging thing. And then yeah, Forsberg. I mean, just yeah, we're recording this the morning of Tuesday, so that game has not happened yet against Sweden against, is it Azerbaijan, or is it? I think it's something like that. I have not checked, but regardless, just also Forsberg did not play in either of the two games from the jump against NYCFC. He was dealing with some reported illness in May, didn't start that game, and then the Derby in September was when he made his return from injury. So if he's fully healthy from the start, it just changes the complexion of the game. You just have the tempo in the midfield, that creative spark, which NYCFC has with Maxi Morales and Santi Rodriguez in the midfield, and if we can kind of match that, where we didn't really have that in the past two games, could be definitive. Also, in terms of what you were talking about with winning the ball higher up in the field, I think against Columbus, a lot of it was absorbing the pressure, as opposed to kind of being out and aggressive and winning it in the final third. But I think in a lot of ways, you had Diego Rossi out for game one. Cucho was really limited in the way they managed the game. I think with NYCFC at home, where they're so successful playing at Citi Field especially, I think you don't want to let them have extended possession going forward into the final third and breaking up those plays a lot earlier. But this team has also showed that they are capable of absorbing pressure. And as you said, Dylan Nealis has been fantastic. I mean, just another incredible player who has fully transformed over the past 2 seasons. So yes, there is, as Joseph Lowry said on MLS, there is a path for the Red Bulls fairy tale story to continue. Like it is a possibility. They have all the pieces. If all the pieces stay healthy, if the tactics stay sound, there is a path for this thing to work on Saturday.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about the success of the press didn't come from necessarily turning the ball over in Columbus's own third. It was more about just forcing them into uncomfortable places to progress the ball forward. And as much as NYCFC tries to play a possession style of football, Wilfred Nancy's Columbus Crew do that on steroids and have at times looked like a proper European side who can knock the ball around with some against the likes of some of the best in the world. The fact of the matter is, though, they didn't look like that against the Red Bulls in those 2 games, even though they had the bulk of the chances and controlled the pace of play. What we saw from this Red Bulls team was just a different attitude to what we've seen for most of the season, and it paid off in terms of the result. I mean, we haven't even talked about just the honestly, I would say countless now over both of those games, just last-ditch efforts of defense, whether it was that Daniel Edelman 60-yard sprint to close down. I don't remember who had the shot. I think it might have been Mo Farsi or AZ Jackson, but he came back and after giving possession away, 60-yard sprint, sliding challenge comes in to deny a scoring opportunity. Like there was a lot of those moments where it was just balls to the walls type of stuff. And that's what it's going to take in a derby game. It always does take that in a derby game, but especially one that's this emotional with this much on the line. There is a path for the Cinderella story to continue, but I mean, just as a cautionary tale, Luca, we've been here with this team. We've had this feeling before. I mean, it could just be we're all huffing on a little bit of hopium right now, but at the same time, we've all been here, and it's all in the back of our minds what a loss this weekend would look and feel like. I know we don't want to go there. We don't even want to materialize those feelings yet until we have to. But let's face it, this is the Red Bulls. This is Metro. We can't get too far ahead of ourselves and then look back and say, well, I thought we were going to win MLS Cup. Let's be real. It's still the odds stacked against us, and we have to accept that reality before we go into the game Saturday. I think it's only going to make us better off for it. It's only going to make us want it more, us play harder, and I mean, this is as fun as it gets. We've not been treated to one of these yet. Yeah. And it's probably not going to be the last one, but the fact that it's the first and it's happening now in this year is just wild that we've even gotten this far. Yeah. But we shouldn't be okay with just getting this far. That's my mentality right now.
Yeah, and I think if you compare this to 2018, obviously the playoff format was so different, but technically, if you compare this to our playoff run then, it hasn't even started yet because we had a round one bye that year. Like, the leg one against Columbus in 2018 has not even happened yet. Like, our playoff run, the equivalent of our playoff run has not even started to that year that was so successful and we got so far. So it's different now, obviously, with single elimination games, but we just have not progressed as far as it feels like we have. So, as you said, still 2 wins away from being in MLS Cup for the first time in 16 years, and that would be insane. We just can't get ahead of ourselves. The other stat that we haven't mentioned is the whole Red Bulls in knockout games against NYCFC. They're a perfect 4-0, and perfect in the sense of like not even conceding any goals either. All of them have been clean sheets. That goes back to the 2017-2018 Open Cup back-to-back, and then 2022 Open Cup, 2023 Leagues Cup. The main caveat is that all of those games were played at Red Bull Arena, and this is the first knockout game that's being played away from home, which is kind of crazy to think about. So I think you can kind of... I think that's the one piece where it doesn't feel like we're the underdog, and in a way I kind of don't even want to spotlight that too much and just kind of forget about those games. I mean, if you're drawing equivalencies in these tournaments, the Open Cup 2022 game was a quarterfinal. This is a quarterfinal too in the whole tournament. So the Red Bulls and NYCFC have met this far in a competition before, but I mean, Open Cup just has a whole different, luster to it. Luis Barraza was playing in that game in goal, and he did not have a good night. And then the Leagues Cup one last season was just kind of like a fluky Omir Fernandez penalty that just, we scraped by. And so I don't think you want to, like, if you're Red Bulls fans, I don't think you want to buy into that too much. And just think about Saturday, think about the season that we've had, respect the opponent. NYCFC is at a crazy final stretch, and credit to them. They've been doing really well, and especially at home. So we know what it's like to face this team in knockout games and be successful. It's the first time we have to do it in a do-or-die situation away from home.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those Open Cup victories, and I believe it was 2017, 2018, and 2022.
Yeah.
I think, especially that 4-0 win in 2018 and that 3-0 win with the Thiago Andrade red card.
Yeah.
For headbutting Tolkien.
I just remember that game being super tense. Like, I don't know why, but just it felt like there was such a tense energy in the first half, and then the second half just opened up. But
they blew it up. That was one of the Luquinhas legacy games. That was right. That was right when Luquinhas was bagging him in.
Yeah.
Seemed like he was getting a goal or assist every weekend at that point. And admittedly, it didn't turn out too great after that for his time in New York, but those felt good. But if I can relay a bit of hope and confidence without sounding like those games are a foregone conclusion for how a Red Bulls NYCFC knockout's going to go, just remember how good those wins felt. Right? It was the Open Cup. It was Leagues Cup. They still felt fun. Now imagine how much fun a win this Saturday would feel. Knock on wood, it's not going to come down to that necessarily. They could lose, and it could feel horrible, but this is a different beast altogether. We know that. The fact that it's on the road is a different type of test, and it's going to come down to what happens during those 90 minutes. No history, nothing else this season. Nothing else against Columbus. Nothing else is going to matter but what happens between those white lines in that baseball stadium in front of that limited capacity.
Yeah, in front of the 22,000 winterized Citi Field crowd.
Yep. It's not the ideal scenario, but when is it ever really in this league, in this country, when we play this sport? My advice would be to embrace it all. And another reminder, you guys haven't earned anything yet. I don't mean to say that to take anything away. I mean that to keep you guys hungry. I'm so excited for this Saturday, but I'm also feeling that dread as well.
Yep.
But this is why we love the game. This is why we love this team. This is something we all wanted from the get-go, because for most of the season it looked like the Red Bulls were going to finish fourth and Citi were going to finish fifth. Well, it went a little bit differently, but we found ourselves in an even more exciting scenario where
higher
it's
stakes.
happened one round later, with higher stakes. So this is as fun as this league can get, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Cangelosi said it best in his recent New York Post SNY interview. He was saying that the only higher stakes game could be the Eastern Conference Final, where you're lifting a trophy at the end of that game. In this case on Saturday, it's either team advances to a game where they can lift a trophy, and so that should just really serve as extra motivation. And it feels like the path is, like there's so much left, but we're so close at the same time. It's really deceptive
Right.
in that way. Winning a series can do that. But yeah, Citi Field Saturday, 5:30 p.m. I believe all of the Red Bull supporters tickets are fully sold out, so hoping for a really packed crowd up there in the 300 level. If you're thinking about it, if you're on the fence, tickets are kind of expensive, but honestly, it is going to be the biggest game probably this season. As you said, the Columbus game doesn't even really matter anymore. This is the biggest game the Red Bulls have played this season, and is really the defining game of the season. And yeah, I think not much more to say, but just just come into Saturday ready to die for your boys, but don't go in overly optimistic. Just take it as it comes, and there's a lot of faith to be had, but we shouldn't go in cocky. Let's keep that underdog mentality. Let's keep things under wraps, so to speak, and then show up on Saturday. That's kind of my philosophy. So yeah, kind of a short one this week, but thanks to James for coming back onto the pod as we preview the first ever Hudson River Derby in the playoffs. Yeah, like a historic week in New York soccer, the New York soccer landscape. I wish this was getting maybe a bit more media coverage, but yeah. Any final closing words? 30 seconds, just to recap it all.
I guess I would say that if you're on the fence about going to the game, I would maybe consider how big of a match this is in the club's history, and consider that as a factor. I understand the tickets are expensive; not everybody can get to go. And yes, don't be too cocky, but you gotta believe. You gotta believe, because without belief, we're going nowhere. Support your boys. Be loud if you're in the stadium, and yeah, let's make this a weekend to remember, Red Bulls fans.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll see you guys on the other side of it, and whether that means the off season ahead or a spot in the Eastern Conference Finals. So from Luca and James, it's been a pleasure. Follow James on all socials, Fordham Soccer, play-by-play, all that good stuff. He's killing
Into
it.
the national tournament now.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, hell yeah. I'm paying attention to all the NYU stuff for the women's side. So D3 national tournament, but yeah, so good stuff ahead in the world of the non Red Bull soccer world too. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time, and hopefully see you at Citi Field.